Hello and welcome to the oboe warm-up class. My name is Mr. Mitchell. Most of you might know me, but for those that you don't, I'm a local music teacher in Oregon. Today we're going to talk about a bunch of different ways that we can warm up on the oboe to help you get ready for your practice sessions. It's always a good idea to warm up on your instrument or even with your breathing before you start, because that really gets you going at the beginning of every practice session. I would always recommend this earlier in the morning, maybe not too early in the morning, but once you get up, maybe, have your breakfast, and then after you've had your breakfast, wash your mouth out, and then you can do your warm-ups before you go to your practice session or whatever you have going for the day. So this has to do with a couple different things. Number one is air. We always have to have a lot of good steady air while we're playing any instrument, especially the oboe. And so we're going to focus on our breathing at the beginning. So we're going to do a couple different breathing exercises to help get your breathing going. When we do this, when I breathe in, I'm going to have my hand right here in front of my face, but with my mouth as in an O shape like this. When I do that, I have a low sound of air rather than kind of a really wispy, kind of windy sound of air. It sounds like this. I don't know if you can hear it too much on the video, but that's a lot better than sounding something like this. We don't want that kind of almost like freezing cold air type of sound. We want a low sound, almost like a Darth Vader type sound. Like that. So when we breathe in, we want to make sure that we do that. When we breathe out, we move our hand from this position to this position out in front of our face so that the air hits our hand right in the center, almost like a needle point in the center of our hand. Okay, we're going to try a couple different things. We're going to go breathing in for 4 counts, and out for 4 counts. And then we're going to move it from in for 2 to out for 6. And then we're going to do in for 1 count and out for 8 counts. So make sure that we have a steady stream of air the entire time, whether you're breathing in or whether you're breathing out. Let's give it a try. I've got my metronome here. We're going to set it to 80 beats a minute and try in for 4 and out for 4. If you're sitting, make sure you're sitting up tall with your feet flat on the floor. If you're standing, that's perfectly normal. Make sure that you're not locking your knees, that you're bending your knees slightly so that you don't pass out. Here we go. Let's try it. 1, 2, breathing in. Two more times. Keep your shoulders down when you breathe. In for 2, out for 6. One more time. In for 1, out for 8. Keep your shoulders down. One more time. And we're done. If you're starting to feel lightheaded or kind of dizzy, make sure to put your head in between your legs and start breathing in relaxed for maybe in for 4, out for 4, and trying to regain, get some blood rushing to your head so that you don't pass out. If you kind of keep like this and kind of keep your breathing a little bit shallow, then you'll probably have a tendency to pass out. If you are standing up and you're feeling like you're kind of dizzy or lightheaded, please sit down. Please sit down. Do not keep standing up. And again, put your head in between your legs and breathe in and out very relaxed so that you can regain kind of normalcy in your breathing. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our oboe reed. Again, first you want to make sure that you have maybe a little container full of water so that you can put your oboe reed in there. You probably want to put your oboe reed in there before you start playing it, probably to soak maybe for about a minute, maybe 2 minutes. You don't really want it more than 2 minutes because then it can get really overly soaked and you don't want that. So now that we're ready, we're going to take just the oboe reed and do a couple of what we call crows on the oboe reed. And we're also going to do some kind of tone and pitch bends on the oboe reed as well. So first we'll start with the crows. When we're doing this, we want it's not going to be a very nice sound, so we want to make sure that, but when you get the crow, you'll know that you're doing it correctly. It sounds something like this. Again, it doesn't sound very nice, but that's the sound that we want on the oboe reed. That will get us a really beautiful sound when we have the oboe and the reed put together. Okay, so we're going to do a couple things. We're going to breathe in for 2 and out for 8 with our metronome so that we can get the crows working. We're going to do this about 4 times. Here we go, same speed on the metronome. Make sure that your reed is wet before you start. And 1, 2, ready. Breathe in. Two more times. Okay, so that's what the crow kind of sounds like. I'm going to take the video camera and move it closer to me so that you can see how the reed is in my lips. Give me a second here. So basically how I started, and again, I am not a professional oboe player, but I do have taken a couple classes on how to play oboe, being a music educator. So feel free to take my advice kind of with a grain of salt. If you're an advanced oboe player and you already have a private teacher, please listen to what the private teacher is telling you to do. But for right now, if you need the steps how to place the oboe reed in your mouth, I usually put the bottom of my reed on my lip like this. And then I slightly bring it in, and then close together. I don't ever use the teeth on the reed because that's not okay, because that stops the vibration between the double reeds here. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do some pitch bends. Okay, which basically means that you're going to bring the reed out from your mouth a little bit, not all the way, and then in a little bit, to get different pitches. That helps us kind of to know that the reed is going to work today, and also to make sure that we can manipulate the tones on the reed. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. And if you get the crow in there, that is totally fine. That's actually what we want a little bit, okay? And then if you feel like it, once you're doing the crow on the reed and the pitch bends, you can also use your tongue against the tip of the reed for some articulation, something like this. Okay? We're just going to try and do this on our own. We're not going to really have it kind of metronomically put out here or anything. We're just going to try it together at the same time. So while I'm doing this, you can do this at home in your room or wherever you're practicing or warming up. Here we go. We're going to try this about 4 or 5 times. Try and go a little bit lower, a little bit higher each time. Again, notice how when the reed comes out, the pitch goes down, and when I put the more reed in my mouth, the pitch goes up. That'll be super important for any beginners or any intermediate players to remember, so that when you're playing on the actual oboe, it does the exact same thing with the tone or the pitch or the intonation of the note. Okay, so we're going to try that a couple more times. Here we go. And again, notice how I used my tongue a little bit on the tip of the reed, more like I'm saying the syllable ta, 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 to help articulate and define the sound of the reed. Here we go. Let's try it a couple more times. Ready? Go. Okay, let's try it one more time. And you know, you gotta use steady air so that the sound stays consistent. Ready? One more time. Again, not only do I move the reed in and out of my mouth, but sometimes I increase my air pressure. So the amount of air going through the double reed sometimes gets a little bit stronger and I blow a little faster. And that also changes the pitch. I won't, this time just for a demonstration, I won't actually move the reed in and out of my mouth. I'll just increase or decrease air pressure. Check it out. So basically what happens is as I increase air pressure, the tone and the pitch goes up. As I decrease air pressure, there's a certain point where it won't actually make a tone anymore. So you got to be careful at that point. But notice that if you increase your air pressure, the pitch goes up, which can be pretty helpful for you at times. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our oboe here, and I'm going to scoot the camera out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the reed in my oboe first, and now I'm going to move the camera back down so you can see my fingers throughout the rest of the video. There we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do some long tones on the oboe. It's a great idea to play long tones before you start even practicing your sheet music or your band book or anything like that. It just kind of gets everything working. It gets the reed working through the instrument, and it gets our fingers kind of working, but not working too much because we're just focused on the tone and making the most beautiful sound that we can on the oboe. So what we're first going to do is we're going to start and play 8 beats per note. We're going to breathe in for 4 each time and play 8 beats per note with steady airstream and a beautiful sound. We're going to start all the way down to our low D, which is, if we look, there's no thumb on the bottom. On the left hand, we have our first finger covering the whole up top, second finger, third finger, and in the right hand, 1, 2, 3. That's our low D. Okay, again, if you need to, if you haven't used your reed in a few moments, you can dip it back in your water container to get it working a little bit better. And again, we're going to breathe in for 4 counts and out for 8 counts on our note. Okay, we're going to move the metronome up to 88 beats a minute. Here we go. Make sure you're still sitting up tall when you're playing the oboe. 1, 2, breathe in for 4. In. Make sure your fingers are curved. One more time. Tap your foot while you're playing. Great. Now we're going to go on to E flat, which is all the same fingers, just push down this bottom pinky right here. There we go. 1, 2, breathe in for 4. Steady airstream while you're doing this. Great. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to F. F, you can either do a couple of different ways. You can use your forked F fingering if you know that, or you can just use, it's like E, but then you have your what we call the banana key, what I call the banana key. that's going to be F. All the other fingers are the same. Here we go. F. 1, 2, breathe in first. Make sure you're still sitting up tall and tapping your foot. One more time. Great, now we're going to go up to G, which is basically no right hand, but all the fingers that we have been using in our left hand. Here we go, here's G. 1, 2, breathe in for 4. Make sure you're using a steady stream of air. One more time. Now we're going to move on to A. Just lift up that ring finger so that we have just these two fingers and our thumb is still off of that register key in the back. And 1, 2, breathe in for 4. Make sure your fingers stay curved. One more time. Now let's move on to B flat. These top fingers stay the same, and then we just add this first finger in our right hand. 1, 2, breathe in for 4. Make sure your fingers stay close to the keys. One more time. Great. And again, if you're an advanced player, you could keep doing this all the way up an octave and even further if you want to challenge yourself. What I would also do is, as you're playing these long tones, maybe have like not only a metronome, if you have a metronome, but I would also use a tuner so that you can make sure that you're playing these notes in the correct intonation and in the correct pitch. So after that, now what we're going to do is we're going to try something different. We're going to do what I like to call octave jumps, okay? So some certain notes on the oboe are able to, with the same fingers or the same finger combination, are able to jump up an octave, either using a half hole, what we call where your first finger up top moves down to let out this open hole. That's what we call half hole. Or sometimes to jump up an octave, you use the register key here or the register key here on this side. Okay, so for right now, we'll do what's called we'll use the half hole technique. And let me give you a diagram of the half hole notes that we would use for right now. These are not all of them, but these are just some that we're going to use. So the first notes that we're going to use for our half hole are going to be D over here and E flat over here. Once we get to E, F, F sharp, G, A flat, and A, we will be able to use our register key in the back to make those notes work, or the side register key once we get a little higher. Okay, so for right now we're going to play D. We're first going to start with the low one and then use half hole to play the higher one. Same thing with E flat. I'll leave this up for you so that you can take a picture of it if you need to, or you can pause the video and take a screenshot. Okay, let's give it a try. So what we're going to do what we're going to do basically is we are going to start with low D fingers. So this top finger is going to be closing the hole up top. And we're going to add 1, 2, 3, and then in the right hand, 1, 2, 3. No pinkies yet. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to play the low D for 4 beats, and then we're going to lift our top finger to the half hole position, like this, so that we get the higher D. It's going to sound like this. Every finger other than that stayed the same. Nothing else changed. Let me demonstrate it again. You want to make sure that your air stays consistent. Okay, we're going to do this 4 times per every finger combination. Here we go. 4 on one note, 4 on the higher note. And 1, 2, breathe. Rest. Again. 2 more times. One more time. Great, now what we're going to do is we're going to just start it on E flat, which is all the same fingers here, but then add this bottom pinky here. Here we go. E flat. And 1, 2, ready, go. Keep your air steady. Make sure your air is steady going to the top. One more time. Great. Next what we're going to do is we're going to do E, which is basically these top 3 fingers and these bottom 2 right here. These bottom 2 right here. Okay? Instead of doing a half hole up here, we would now add the register key in the back for the higher one. So let me demonstrate for you at a side angle. Hopefully you guys can see this. For the low E and then the higher E. Let me zoom in a little bit so that you can see what my fingers are doing. Notice how my thumb just moved slightly up to that next register key to activate the register key. Okay, here we go. E. And 1, 2, breathe. Rest. 2, ready, go. Make sure your fingers stay close to the keys. Again. One more time. Now we're going to do the same thing with the register key in the back on F with the banana key down here. Here we go. And 1, 2, breathe. Rest. Two more times. And one more time. Keep your air steady. Great. Now we're going to do G, which is where we lift up just our right hand and we just have our left hand working. Okay, here we go. No pinky in the left hand though. 1, 2, G. Steady airstream will help with the octave jumps. Increase air pressure slightly on the top one. more time. Great. Awesome. Now, before we do the next one, just make sure that your thumb stays close to the register key. You don't want to have too much excess movement. Okay, so I like to keep mine close so that it just moves up a little bit to push down. Okay, here we go. Let's move on to A flat, which is just like G, but now we're going to add this top pinky key here. Okay, for you advanced oboists, you can also use this side key here. Notice how when I push this side key on the right side, it also pushes down that A flat key. They both do the same thing. Okay, let's try A flat. Here we go. And 1, 2, breathe in. Rest. Two more times. One more time. Now we're going to try A. A is actually different now. Now we're going to use the side register key right here to play A. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and... Make sure to blow pretty strong air. One more time. Okay, great. That was our long tone octave jumps. Again, you can do them with a bunch of different notes, but those were most of the notes, not all of the notes, but most of the notes that use the same fingering and only add either a half hole or a octave key. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to some articulations. Okay, so we're going to do some long tones, but with some articulations. So first, we're going to play each note as 4 smooth quarter notes, 4 tenuto quarter notes. It'll sound like this. We're going to start on G in the staff. Sounds like this. Something like that, and then we'll move up after 4 times of each. Okay, so after G, we're going to move up to A, and then we're going to move up to B, and then we'll move up to C. So we're also learning how to play B. Remember, B is just that first top finger for B. Okay? Once we get all the way up to D with half hole, then we will move on to our scales segment. Here we go. We're going to slow down the metronome here so we can be a little bit more aware of our tongue position, which will mean that our tongue is going to hit the tip of the reed as if we're saying ta, to make sure that we get a clear articulation. Here we go, starting on G. 4 smooth quarter notes, 4 beats of rest. 1, 2, ready. Rest, 2, 3, 4. Make your tongue motion light and smooth. One more time before we change notes. Move up to A, lift one finger up. Breathe. One more time before we change notes. Move up to B, just lift up a finger. One more time. Move to C. Add the first finger in your right hand. One more time. D, all fingers, no pinkies, half hole. Half hole. And we're done. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do our scales segment. Basically, our scales help with us playing a bunch of different things. It helps us to play our sheet music. It helps us to learn more different notes and their different combinations if we might need it. So I've chosen a couple of different scales that are pretty easy to understand for the oboe. Sometimes in band class we learn very odd scales that are for the that really sometimes work for the oboe and other times don't. Like B flat scale is kind of a tough one for the oboe because we have to use forked F and things like that. So right here on my diagram I've chosen 4 scales that would be beneficial for the oboe. I'll leave these up on the screen so that you can take a screenshot of them if you need to. So feel free to pause the video in just a moment so that you can take a screenshot of these or write them down in a notebook or on a piece of paper. Here they are. So as you can see, we're going to start on all the way down. We're going to start on our F scale, then move to our G scale, and then D scale, and then C scale. There will be a couple of notes that you might not be familiar with if you're a beginner. Don't worry about that. I will go through all of these before we start doing this. What we're going to do is we're going to play them in half notes and go up the scale and then come immediately back down, and we won't repeat the top note. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to start with our F scale. Our F scale has all basically normal notes or natural notes. The only one that's flatted is our B flat. So let me go through the notes really quickly for you. We're going to start on our F, which is, you can use banana key F, so all 3 fingers down up top, 1, 2, and then banana key here. Once we get to F, then we go to G, which is lift up all your right hand, then A, then B flat, which is just A, but add that first hand here, first finger in the right hand. Then we're going to go to C, which is where we just lift up the second finger, keep the first one in the right hand down. Then we're going to go to D, which is half hole and most of the fingers down, no pinkies. Then we're going to go to E natural, which will need your register key and the first 2 fingers in the right hand. And then we're going to go back to F, which is our banana key, and then don't forget the register key up top. Okay? If you need help, you can probably search in your band book for a fingering if you're unsure, or if I wasn't very clear in explaining something, feel free to use that band book. Feel free to pause the video right now before we start. Okay, here we go. Half notes for each note going up and then coming down. Let's give it a try. We're going to have our metronome on at 78 beats a minute. Here we go. F scale. And 1, 2, breathe. So that's what the F scale sounds like. Feel free to repeat the video. Again, I am not an experienced oboe player, but I do know how to get my way around a little bit. So if you want to dislike the video because I messed up one little bit, that's totally fine. I understand, but just realize that I am not a professional oboe player that plays these instruments daily. Okay, so let's go on to our next scale. Our next scale is our G scale. Here it is again, if you need help. Our G scale consists of 1 sharp sign, and this is actually an easy fingering for the oboe. It's going to include our F sharp in here. So here's the notes for our G scale. We start on G, just like that, then move up to A, then move up to B, then add our right hand down for C, then we go half hole D, which is all fingers, no pinkies, and then we go to E, which has our register key in the back. Then F sharp is where we just lift this bottom finger. That's F sharp. It's really one of the easier notes to play on the oboe. And then we go to G. And for those last three notes, E, F sharp, and G, I kept my register key down the entire time. Okay? If you need help, feel free to look at my fingers throughout the video, and feel free to repeat this part of the video coming up so that you can practice the scale multiple times. I recommend practicing scales not just once and then moving on to the next one. Probably about 2 or 3 times would be a good limit, or even a good amount for you to practice your scales. Okay, here we go. Our G scale. And 1, 2, ready. So that was, again, our G scale. Let's move on to our D scale. D scale has a couple of challenging notes, but not too many. The only challenging note for some beginners or early intermediate students would be our C sharp. So again, if you look on your paper, or your screenshot that you took of the scales, we start on D. We're going to start on low D, which is with our the half hole covered. So we're going to start on low D, then go up to E, then F sharp, which we already learned in the last scale. Then we go to G, A, B, and this one's going to be kind of tricky because you got to move all fingers at once. So from B we go to C sharp, which is half hole up top, all fingers down up top here. No register key, just half hole. 1, 2, 3, and that middle pinky right here in the middle. That'll be our C sharp. And then once you get to D, all you have to do is lift up that bottom pinky. Everything else stays the same. That is our D scale. Again, you want to make sure that your fingers stay close to the keys if they're not being used. So you don't want to have your fingers out like this. You want to keep them close to the keys so that when you go from B to C sharp, it's not such a big motion. It's a manageable motion. Okay, here we go. Let's try it. Your D scale. Half notes again. Don't repeat the top note. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Again, that was our D scale, and our final scale of this scales portion of the video is our C scale. Now here, C scale has all natural notes. There's no flat notes, there's no sharp notes, it's all regular notes. So we first start off with C, and we're actually going to play the higher C scale, so to give you some experience with playing the higher tones if you're a beginner or an early intermediate student. If you're advanced, this should be easy for you, this should be no problem. Okay, so we'll start with our C, first finger here, first finger down here. Then we'll go to D, which is half hole up here, and all fingers down with no pinkies. And then we'll move on to E, which is where we cover the half hole and have a register key. And then we'll do, you can do fork F if you want to, but we'll do banana key F. And then you move to G, to A, which is where you want to add your second register key here, and then B, and then C. If we keep our register keys down, those notes should pop up without any trouble. Just keep your air moving fast. Here we go, our C scale. 1, 2, ready, go. Now remember, when you get up to the top, you could notice that I had a little bit of water in one of my keys there up at the top. When you're going up to the top, make sure that you've got those register keys down and you're using fast air. Okay? Let's try it one more time for the sake of repetition. Here we go. 1, 2, ready? Again, feel free to replay this part of the video so that you can practice these scales 2, 3, 4 times if you need it, so that you can see what fingers that I was using and how it should sound. Okay, this concludes our portion of the scales and our portion of the warm-up. Feel free, when you're playing these scales, it doesn't have to be just long notes. You could practice them with any different variation of articulation. You can try some quarter notes, smooth quarter notes. You can try different eighth notes. You can also, if you're more advanced, you can try different 16th note patterns or triplet patterns. Anything that will help you to kind of vary the scales. We don't want to get into a habit of just kind of going through the motions and playing scales without really thinking about them. We always want to stay active when we're playing our scales or long tones or anything like that. So you could play any of these scales like a certain way, maybe with like 2 eighth notes and a quarter note like this. You know, for an example, or if you're more advanced, you could try maybe an eighth note plus 2 16th notes pattern. And so on and so forth. Or you could try it, reversed, or maybe a syncopated 16th note pattern. Whatever works for you, whatever your difficulty level is at, or whatever your skill level is at, just make sure that you're always trying to challenge yourself. That's the biggest part. Anyway, this concludes our warm-up portion for the oboe. Again, this should be your warm-up, and I suggest you doing parts of this, or maybe all of this, each and every day to really get yourself going and get yourself practicing. After this, you can move on to your repertoire, your sheet music that you might be working on, or your band book that you might be playing out of, or whatever, or if a solo, if you're preparing a solo, and things like that. Again, if you're practicing, make sure to practice. I always recommend practicing in chunks, in smaller chunks. Don't try and just play a whole song straight through and hope that, it's going to be great. Practice, if you really want to practice and get better, practice things in smaller chunks and practice them slowly and then start to speed them back up. It's also important to remember that you should take breaks when you need it. You shouldn't be playing like a whole bunch of time unless you feel like, oh, I can really do this and I'm okay with this. Okay, so again, I'm not an oboe player, but take my advice. I mean, I've watched and taught a bunch of people, so I know kind of what we're dealing with, and so hopefully this is helpful to you. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. If you didn't quite like this video, that's totally cool. That's your opinion. Feel free to give it a thumbs down if you think so. If you like these types of videos, go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more information on these videos. And happy practicing, and we'll see you in the next video.